Head filmisõbrad, me oleme jälle tagasi siin Nordic Hotel Foorumis ja nüüd õige pea alustame juttu Saksamaa režissööriga ja räägime tema filmist Tomorrow We Are Free, aga enne veel vaatame ära selle filmi treileri.
Unser Frühling ist vorüber, die Vergangenheit ist vergangen und ich suche nach meinem Schicksal.
Willkommen zu Hause, Genosse.
Der Schah ist weg! Iran wird ein freies Land sein!
Ich habe dir dieses Versprechen gegeben, dass ich mitkomme, aber es ist 12 Jahre her und ich war frisch verliebt.
Wir haben keine Möglichkeit, Ihre Dissertation hier zu betreuen.
Wenn du mir mit Sarah in den Iran folgst, dann nur, weil du es auch wirklich willst.
Willkommen zu Hause.
Ich könnte mir vorstellen, mit Ihnen zusammenzuarbeiten. Hier müssen Sie sich entscheiden zwischen einem Leben als Hausfrau und einer Karriere als Akademikerin.
Wie siehst du denn aus?
Das sind die islamischen Regeln für Frauen an öffentlichen Orten.
Ein neues Pressegesetz schränkt die Meinungsfreiheit stark ein.
Die Religiösen möchten, dass sämtliche nicht-islamische Inhalte vom Lehrplan verschwinden.
Eure Revolution ist gescheitert.
Jede Revolution hat ihren verdammten Preis!
شوهرت کجاست ها؟
شوهرش چی کار داری؟ شوهرش که کاری نکرده که.
Das habe ich mir auch anders vorgestellt, die Freiheit.
Wenn Sarah und ich hier rauskommen,
Dann kommen wir nicht mehr zurück.
مرا ببوس مرا ببوس برای آخرین بار تو را خدا نگهدار که میروم به سوی سرنوشت.
Tere tulemast tagasi. Minu kõrval on istet võtnud selle filmi režissöör Hossein Pourseifi. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Your movie, Tomorrow We Are Free. This is a story of people who want to be free. They're fighting for democracy, for freedom. And how did you put all this Iran revolution in one movie?
Well, the truth is, of course, we didn't put all of it in the movie, right? So it takes over a bunch of years. There's a lot more that happens in real life than we can put in one movie. But what we try to do is have one rule, which is anytime something happens in a revolution and it affects this family we're telling the story about directly, we will try to put it in the movie. And there are a bunch of things that aren't in the movie that happen that are far worse. But because we wanted to have not a checklist of things, but rather something that is integral to the family's life, it feels maybe that a lot of it is in the movie, but in fact we just focused on the core things that happen.
I have to take a step back right now because yes, this is one family story. Correct. Actually. This is kind of even a love story. But maybe you can tell our viewers, potential movie viewers as well, that what is the story summary, maybe?
Well, the story is you have a chemist, a woman who lives in East Germany, what used to be East Germany, and she is married to an Iranian exile who has fled the Shah of Iran, and they have a child together, and this man is a communist, and because of his beliefs he had to flee. So when the revolution happens, they think anything is possible. They think they can go back home, or he thinks they can go back home and start a new life. And of course, every revolution that goes wrong has that promise at the beginning, and that's what was interesting about this family, was how optimistic they were, how hopeful they were, and in the end how much or how little of that hope in the end remains for them. That's
this family really exists,
right.
Whose story you are telling. Yeah?
This is a real story, right? So of course you dramatize and you condense time And actually, one of the hardest things in writing the story was how much you leave out, because at a certain point there is so much that happens to this family that is in a movie would be unbelievable, because people would say, oh, this happens and then this happens too. And so what we had to do was take things out and make it a little bit more malleable for the viewer, right? So, but the core of the story, this couple lived together for 16 years before going to Iran. And most of the things that happen within the four walls of the family actually happened to them. So we could go back and find letters from those years. We could go back and look at photographs from those years and sort of reconstruct the life they had there. So
That's what you did?
that's what we did, yeah.
Yeah,
So
it was like almost the same as the pictures.
in some scenes, of course, you have limitations, right? You can't always do everything the way it's supposed to be, but it's not really about sort of imitating life. It's more about what's the essence of the moment and try to get that essence in another way, even if it's not identical to what the photograph was saying. And one of the things that was very important to me is after the film was finished, the family could watch the movie before it went to the public, right? So I was much more nervous about their reaction than the public's reaction. So when they came back to me and said, it felt like you were with us in those moments, that was a big compliment for us, because we felt like we got the feeling of the moments and the conflict right, but maybe we didn't get the color of the wall right? So that's debatable, but that's not really important. The important thing is, how are they feeling? How are they reacting to each other? How are they reacting to the revolution that was happening? And I think we got most of that right. So,
But how did you meet the family? How did their story?
right. So I met them in Berlin about 11 years ago, and they just started telling me the story, right? So it was almost like a gift. It was like a present. And
Were you friends or strangers?
No, it was a coincidence. It was like a friend of a friend, sort of a. It was mostly a coincidence, and it wasn't even that I was looking for that kind of story, right? So, but when you see something that like you said, it's a love story and it's political and all the things that interest me personally, it's almost like a no-brainer. Why not do this? And so I had to ask them for permission, and the initial idea was do a documentary with them as protagonists of the documentary. And then they came back and said, well, we really don't want to do that. We don't want to put ourselves in the center of it. How about you take out our names and change our names? And so I did that. And then I changed some of the surrounding characters. And then I changed some of the family dynamics between them, the story of the older brother and so on, that was sort of invented into this story, right? So there is this mix of things that they asked me to do in terms of just sort of making it anonymous for them, and giving them enough distance to look at a film with a certain way of judging it fairly. Like if somebody came to me and said, can I make a movie about your life? I would probably say no. And so I was very glad that they said yes, right?
But is there any personal agenda for you for making the movie? Because you are also born in Iran.
Iran, yes, yeah. Yeah, of course. Personal agenda seems like I want to, I don't want to accomplish anything in terms of like, I have to say this and I have to say that. It's not a political statement in the sense that you want to be elected for something. It's more like we are the children of a generation that was responsible for this revolution, right? So in people, my peers in my age group, we always feel like there is this shadow that we have to sort of think about a lot and talk about a lot. And we want to talk about that issue with that generation. And sometimes it's difficult to get in touch with them. Sometimes it's hard to get them talking, right? So one way to get them talking is maybe try to tell their stories so that they are reminded by those times. And we have been screening the movie in Germany, and this is our international premiere. So we've been showing it to audiences in Germany, and when they come and have their Q&A afterwards, the Iranians in the audience are always interested in sort of telling us, yeah, that's how I felt, that's how I was. And so there is a dialogue that gets started, and that was, if you want to talk about an agenda, that was our agenda, is to sort of get my generation talking with that generation responsible for the fact that we're living outside of our home country, right? So
you moved to Germany when you were 9 years old, but how much did you, like back then, even know about Iran revolution?
Okay, so during the revolution itself, I was very little, so I have no memory of that, right? So all of that I had to talk to people who have living memory of it, or I have to research it. But a few years after that, with the beginning of the war between Iran and Iraq, and also with discussions within my family that, who were very political and had a very strong opinion about revolutions and so on, we had sort of a permanent presence. So the revolution was always, like in many families, always a companion, right? It was a historic companion that was always with us, and we sort of always felt like anything we did was always sort of a reference back to it. So with all of those resources, I could sort of, with my colleagues, try to make it work, that people who actually lived through the revolution will look at our movie and say, yeah, it looks right, it feels right, right? So it's nothing worse than having an audience member say to us, which hasn't happened yet, right? Say to us, well, this is not Iran like I remember it. So most of the time is a sort of wonder, how could you make it? Where did you shoot, right? We couldn't shoot in Iran. So the first question always is, how did you shoot this, right? How did you make this? So we have to tell them how we made it and so on.
Okay, well, this is not my first question, but let's come to them. How did you shoot it?
Right, so we shot it in Germany, of all places, and we shot it in Spain, right? So Spain, there is some part of southern Spain that has a similar architecture to Iran or the region in the Middle East, so we could sort of cheat our way into it. And then computer technology is now, you can do anything, right? So you can take pictures and make them background and make them have shadows and life and birds flying and everything, so it feels right. So.
You are actually an engineer. You have studied
I studied
that.
engineering, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But you're a director now.
How did this happen, right?
Yeah, how did this happen?
How did it happen? I didn't know I was interested in film. If I had known I'm interested in film before I started engineering, I would have done it. But it just sort of, during the last semester, when I was almost finished, we had to do some requirements at the university to fill the schedule, right? So there was a course about the movies of Alfred Hitchcock. So I said, well, this is easy. We just watch movies and talk about them, so it won't be a hassle, right? So I can just enjoy my last semester. So we went in there, and it was almost like a revelation, in a sense that we took that one scene, the cornfield scene from North by Northwest, with like 7 minutes of no dialogue, and Cary Grant is running away from this crop duster that's trying to kill him, right? And so we spent like a week talking about these 6 minutes, and I felt like, wow, you can talk about 6 minutes of film for a week and not even feel like you're even approaching the end of it. And I had always wanted I had always written. So that was always there, articles for student newspapers, and writing was always something that was there, even with engineering. So it was like, okay, well, and the beautiful thing is, when you're beginning, you don't know how much you don't know about filmmaking. So you think, how hard can this be? So you buy a camera and you sit down and write a 100-page script, and you get theater actors and the result is, of course, terrible, right? So, but then this terrible causes you to think about, why is it terrible, and keep doing it until one day you get an opportunity to do a proper film, right? So here we are.
But do you feel that your education have helped you to make better movies, because you play a lot with details, with symbols,
right?
The little things.
Well, I think I can't really say I have a lot of experience, right? So this is my first long movie, feature film. So in this experience, it definitely helped to have the engineering background because you have to be organized, you have to be prepared, and you get basically 1,000 questions every day from everybody. And so you have to have at least pretend like you know what you're doing. And a lot of times I didn't know what I was doing, and I had a lot of help, right? So my producer, who is here also, he helped a lot. My actors helped me a lot. So it's a lot of faking it until it works, and learning from the mistakes. But being organized, being prepared, those things, of course, part of what we think as engineers are always sort of prepared and organized and neat, and so that sort of helped to sort of get into it. And then once you're in the middle of shooting, then it's sort of like a train, and it's going.
You said that the writing part has always been a part of you, and you wrote the script yourself as well. You must have done a lot of research.
Right.
You did that by yourself?
Well, I mean, I didn't do all of the work myself, right? So even the writing is always a collaborative thing, right? For instance, two of my actors who are here, one day there was a scene that we were shooting and it wasn't working, right? So then we had a weekend off and they went off to have a couple of days off. And during the train ride, they wrote me a scene and said, well, look, this could work. So then I took their dialogue that they had sort of scribbled and photographed for me, and I wrote it in my voice, right? So that, but essentially they did the work for it. So even writing is not just me alone, and research is not me alone. It's a big team of people. It's just sort of trying to navigate it in the right direction. For instance, what is it that we want to criticize, or what is it that we find wrong in the Islamic Republic, which, for instance, one of the biggest things for us was the fact that women are forced to wear headscarves even after 40 years. So we felt like, well, this is a big issue for us. We all have mothers and daughters and sisters, and we feel like that's wrong. So let's do research on that, right? So, and that's one of the reasons why it took us 10, 11 years to make it. So.
Yeah, that would have been my next question. That when you told you met the family like
11 years ago, 2008, I think.
2008, and this is 2019 today, and you have your international premiere here,
right.
Black Nights.
Crazy.
Yeah, this is a hell lot of work. You have been doing this one project?
No. So you do a lot of writing on other things too, right? So it's something that's always been a topic that I'm working on, but of course you're doing other things. I have to, earn a living, and I have to write for other people, and sometimes you write things that never go anywhere, right? Nobody wants to do them, or nobody's interested. Nobody wants to give you money for it. So there is a lot of disappointment along the way, and so this project is a lucky one that got through, right? So that's the reason it took so long.
But you took this one part of Iran's history, but you included the German point of view there as well.
Right.
This must have been also a lot of research. You used original materials as well.
Right. So the East German or the European point of view is important because that's what happened, right? So we have a true story. We're telling that true story, and so you have seen the movie, right?
Yeah.
So you know that what happens in the end and all of that. So it's important to have that point of view. But to be honest, it's also very helpful to have that point of view if you are trying to finance something. If you're trying to make a movie in Europe, and you always want to just have all the Iranians and everything is in Persian, of course, it's very unlikely that people will help you finance it. So one way to do it is have that point of view from Europe. And it was hard enough to do it with that even, right? So there are a lot of colleagues that try different ways and maybe don't have the luck of the draw that we had with this point of view, and they never get financed. So we were lucky.
You were, and I am lucky to have this conversation with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hossein. It was very nice conversation.
Thank you very
ja
much.
aitäh ka teile, head PÖFF TV vaatajad ja filmisõbrad. Hossein Pourseifi filmi Tomorrow We Are Free ehk homme oleme me vabad leiate te kõik PÖFFi kavast.